Hello class, this is a video that will help walk you through our first major writing assignment of the semester, Critical Review number 1. Now, in this paper, I'm not looking for you to do anything super advanced. Before we break down exactly what we want to do section to section, the main goal of this paper is I want you to be able to show me that you can identify filmmaking techniques and explain how those filmmaking techniques tell us about the themes and characters of Metropolis. That's it. We're not looking for any huge deep dives into history. We're not even looking for any sort of super theoretical readings of the film. This is just a paper where we can establish a baseline of building blocks on how to look at film techniques and articulate how those film techniques tell us about what we are watching, how they help transmit the theme. So, here are the basics of the paper. It's a short but formal paper, all right, of at least 500 words to 750 words. If you go over a little bit, that's never a problem, but make sure that you have at least 500 words. You will use MLA format. You can follow the links here for how to format in Word or Google Docs. You must have a thesis statement. You must use evidence from Metropolis. So that's 2 different scenes will be the core of your evidence for the paper. And you should revise this paper for clarity. Although this is a short assignment, it is a formal assignment. So issues of readability and clarity do count in the grading. So overall, here would be a basic outline for Critical Review number 1. You will have an introduction, a body of at least 2 paragraphs, and a conclusion, and a works cited page. Right. Starting at the top, your introduction will provide a brief summary and your thesis statement. Your body paragraphs are where you will discuss the evidence you have chosen from the film, your 2 scenes. The conclusion will be the time where you're able to tell me a bit about what you think about the themes presented in the film. And then finally, you will have a works cited page because you're going to reference the movie. Right? Now, you do not need any external or outside sources to make your argument. The main thing I want to see is, can you work with the film, identify filmmaking techniques, and articulate how the film uses those to present its ideas. Right? This is not a research paper, requires nothing external for you to use. However, if you would like to use McKendrick's chapters to help you explain the language of cinema, you may do so. So let's look at part 1, introductions. Your introduction in a basic college essay will have 2 main goals. 1, summarize and introduce the film briefly. 2, and this is the second part, your thesis statement. So, in your introduction, make sure you summarize the basic plot of the film. Make sure you mention Fritz Lang as our director. If you are going to mention important actors in parentheses, make sure you use the real name of those actors who are playing the characters. So if you're going to talk about Maria, make sure you mention Brigitte Helm in parentheses. This basic plot summary of the film should be really brief, 3 to 4 sentences max. Right? You don't have to tell me beat by beat what goes in the film. That's not what we're looking for. We're just looking for a short, sweet introduction. Last part of your introduction is the thesis statement. The thesis statement, which is copied here from the assignment sheet, is to help explain how fundamental film techniques are tied to the presentation of narrative and theme. So your thesis statement must address 2 filmmaking techniques and explain how they relate to a character, theme, or idea from the film. To help you do this, you can check out the Metropolis PowerPoints and videos in week 3 that you can find on the Blackboard site. Body paragraphs. Right? Remember, you need at least 2 body paragraphs. Each body paragraph should have 3 parts. Think of these as 3 steps. your topic sentence, your evidence, and your explanation. Topic sentence. This is how every paragraph should have a topic sentence that expresses the point which you're going to prove with the evidence you're using. All right. If you're talking about topic sentences, you should always use an author's name or the director's name, because remember, that is their theme and idea, which you are now going to prove exists using evidence. So one of the things that you could do in your topic sentence is state how Lang uses a filmmaking technique to tell his story. Right? That would be a topic sentence. You know, how Fritz Lang uses light to present a theme. Next up is the evidence. Now, any good use of evidence for English 237 or whatever should have 3 steps in your body paragraph. You introduce your evidence, present the evidence, and then explain the evidence. So introducing the evidence when we're talking about film is you must provide a context for the scene you're going to describe. When does it take place in the movie? This is you introducing it, all right? Try and do it this way. The reader of your essay should be, from just your introduction, able to make sure they know exactly when the scene is happening in the narrative of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, towards the end. Just the brief context. You know, who's going to be the main character you're going to describe. All right? Present and introduce the scene. Then go on to describe the scene. Now, when you describe the scene, the main thing I want you to do is not describe so much the plot of what's going on, what Maria is doing, what Freder is doing, what Freder's dad's doing, or how Rotwang is doing this, or the workers are doing that. That's not the point. Remember, the point is, describe to me the specific filmmaking techniques and how they're working in that scene. How the camera is cutting to show us different faces. How the light is used. Are we getting close-ups? Are we switching POV shots? Is the sound helping us understand certain things? Is the music? Is the staging? The way the actors are acting? Those are the things that you want to describe. So let me reiterate. You are not describing what happens in the scene. You are describing how Lang, as the director, is showing us what happens via his use of what McKendrick will call the language of film, film grammar. So that's really important. I'm going to say it one more time. When describing your scene, make sure you are describing to me how the filmmaking technique works, not simply what is happening in the quote-unquote plot. All right. So, after you've described to me the specific filmmaking technique, then you can go and explain how this filmmaking technique impacts story. All right. Then you are explaining what you have just told me what happens in the scene. Right? When you explain to me what is going on in your scene, you should have 2 steps. First, tell me why the filmmaking techniques are important to the structure of the film. Then tell me how these filmmaking techniques relate to your thesis statement and present the narrative of the film. All right, so to review, after describing to me how the filmmaking techniques are working in the scene, you're going to do 2 steps. 1, why those filmmaking techniques are important to the inherent structure of the scene. Why camera movement, or shifting POV, or the use of the setting, or the staging of the actors, or the use of light. Why that is important to that specific scene. Then, in a separate, like after that would be your first couple of sentences after your description, then you tell me how this filmmaking technique relates to your thesis statement and the narrative and theme that it helps us understand. Right? So, just remember, each of your body paragraphs should use evidence from the film, a scene. You should introduce the context of that scene, describe what is happening in the scene, especially the filmmaking technique you are describing, then go on to explain how that filmmaking technique helps us understand a theme or narrative from the film. Finally, the conclusion. In this part, you are now able to express what you feel about the theme you have chosen in the film. In particular, I would be interested in you discussing Lang's soft critique of capitalism. In our discussions and videos on the film, we've talked about how Lang wants the mediator to balance the head and the hands of the great city, the intellectual elite, and the workers. We've talked about how, even though Lang is critical of class-based capitalism and segmentation in society, he's not presenting a radical transformation. So, could you talk about how that soft critique, do you feel, does it present a way in your mind to escape class conflict, or does Lang not go far enough in his critique of class-based capitalism? And this conclusion should be 5 to 7 sentences. So only in the conclusion can you use the word I, and you can describe and discuss your thoughts on the themes from the film. Finally, just very briefly, when we talk about double spacing, make sure you remove extra spaces. Like here's an example of a paper from a different class where the student has double spaced it, but they've done it incorrectly by having extra spaces where the 2 red lines are. So just make sure you cut those out. An easy way to check this is if you single space your entire paper, then you will have no spaces between anything. So just to reiterate, here is our outline for critical review number 2. You will have an introduction with a thesis statement. You will have 2 body paragraphs, 1 scene discussed for each body paragraph. You will have a conclusion, and you will have a works cited page. If you want to find out how to cite a film, go to the MLA information section on Blackboard. Also, just Google MLA works cited film. It'll pull it up. Good luck, and don't forget that you can make an appointment with me to discuss your paper in a one-on-one meeting this week.